Hello, Happy New Year and welcome to 2019, and it's the Transfer Daily on the United Stand. Every morning 7 a.m. throughout January you'll get your Transfer Daily, and the transfer race begins for Manchester United. Where will it end? Will it get going? I think it will. I think Manchester United are going to make significant moves in this January transfer window. Remember, you can play Football Index, link in the video description, the game where you can buy shares in players, and transfers is a very, very big part of price increases on Football Index. So it's a good month to be getting involved. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's start off with Manchester United. You can see three names below your screens there: Koulibaly, Memphis and Dembele. Imagine at the end of the month if United have signed all three of those. I'll tell you what, I'll be stunned if we do, but it's exactly the three positions United need to look at, whether it's this transfer window or in the next one. A centre defensive midfielder, a centre back and a right midfielder. Exactly what United need. What's likely? What is likely to happen? Well, let's deal with the centre backs first. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, as I've said before, he may have his say on transfers. In fact, he said he will be consulted on transfers, but transfers are not something that are cooked up overnight like a Christmas turkey. This is not about leftovers. This is about what Manchester United will have been planning for the last few weeks and months. Transfers in January, United have got targets. Now, it's whether they stay with those targets or not, and these will have been decided before Solskjaer came in. Long-term targets. Now, in relation to the midfield position, we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's start off with the right midfield position. Douglas Costa is a player at Juventus who went from Bayern Munich to Juventus quite recently. He said he's happy in Juventus. United have more or less said it's nonsense, yet rumours persist that United are in for Douglas Costa. For me, that's more encouraging because we're in for a right midfielder, and I think we do need one. Now, Pulisic looks like he's going to go to Chelsea. Lozano, I don't think will leave PSV. Costa, I very much doubt he's going to go from Juventus. Leon Bailey, not even really been linked with Manchester United. Memphis Depay can play on the right. He can play on the left as well. He can play up front. For me, Memphis Depay is available for 50 million quid. 50 million quid to bring him to United, and if he does well, he'll be worth 80 million in no time. We've got first refusal on him. I don't think United will have the attitude to go or the appetite to go for him in January. But what do you think? Because I personally think go for him now. Do it now in this bubble of security and no expectation. Because he's got 4 or 5 months to adjust. If we get him in the summer, the press will be all over it. They'll be like, Memphis, he's got to do it this year. United have got to get off to a good start. If you bring him in January, we're already playing catch up with everybody. He's still going to get some press exposure because that's how the UK press works. But if we brought him in January, then he has got that time to adjust in a situation where the expectation of us winning a league or even getting top 4 isn't that high. I don't think we'll do it, but it's certainly something I would look at. Beyond Memphis, I mean, are we really going to get a right midfielder in January? I think we need one. I think it's probably more of a summer move. But for me, I really like Lozano. I really think Memphis would be a good player for now. I don't see us getting Douglas Costa, and I think Pulisic, we've missed the train on that one. United fan or not, I think work's been done by other people while we were snoozing with Mourinho. Mourinho never would have wanted Pulisic because he's a young player. And United, snooze you lose, and I think we've lost out on Pulisic, which is a shame because the American market would be huge, and I think that's why Chelsea are all over it. They are shrewd when it comes to that. The centre-back situation is probably the most voted for position amongst United fans. Alderweireld is obviously very interesting because of that buyout clause at the end of August, 25 million quid. Makes me think Spurs, if Alderweireld's told Spurs he wants to leave, they may let him go in January for 40 and make 15 million on him. Or they might not. They might just try and play the long game with it. I'm not a massive fan of Alderweireld coming to United because he's 30 in March and I think he's on the decline, and I think there's better options out there. One of those would be Manolas. Look, on paper he's not as good as Alderweireld, but he's 3 years younger. He's very, very experienced with Roma. He's an international obviously for Greece. He's very good in the air. He's got a good manoeuvrability for a tall guy, and he's got a release clause of 30 million quid. It's the sort of deal that ticks a lot of boxes. And what would please me about Manolas, and probably wouldn't please you lot, is the same thing I said about Perisic. I really wanted us to get Perisic, and it was against the grain because there was a lot of United fans who were like, I don't want him, he's rubbish, he's a B-Tech this, whatever. And I was like, I've seen a lot of Perisic. He's two-footed, he can put a cross into the box, and nobody in our team can do that at the moment. And it was such a shame we never got him because I think it would have been proved to be a very, very successful signing. I feel the same about Manolas. I've been on about Manolas for about 3 years now. I thought United had moved away from Manolas, to be honest. I thought we were going to sign him a couple of years ago. Now that he's back on the menu, I'd really like to get him. I think it'd be a good signing for Manchester United, and I hope that we do it. And you know what? I think Woodward would be intrigued by it because of the price. I've got a funny feeling we won't be getting Manolas, by the way, but I would be happy with it. Of course, the creme de la menthe, the cherry on the cake. The best signing would be Koulibaly. Whether we could do that deal or not, Napoli not in the Champions League anymore. They're not going to win Serie A. He's sort of treading water there, although I think he is happy under Ancelotti. He's 27 now. He's ready for that step up. I think his attributes, as I've said before, he's quick, he's strong, he reads the game, he's good on the ball. He would adapt to the Premier League, and I think it would be a good signing in January because it would give him 3 or 4 months to adjust with not a lot of pressure. It's whether Napoli would sell in January, and I have said before, I don't see Napoli or Inter Milan selling Skriniar or Napoli selling Koulibaly in January. I just don't think they will. But money talks, and it depends whether United want him and how much they want him for. Because if they want to give 80 million, I think Napoli would bite. And 80 million for Koulibaly, I think, is a good price when you think a year ago Van Dijk went for £75 million. Other centre-backs options, I wouldn't be amazed if we went for Milenkovic from Fiorentina. 21 years of age, Serbian. We've looked at him before. He'd be one for the future. I felt when we were linked with him under Mourinho, it was a bad signing because he's not good at developing players. But remember, we don't have Mourinho here anymore, and younger players coming in the club should be welcomed because that's what we're all about. He'd be an interesting one. Probably get him for about £30 million. That wouldn't surprise me. Eder Militao at Porto, we've been linked with him as well. I think his release clause is 50 million. Liverpool apparently sniffing around. Hasn't played many games for Brazil. Early 20s. Has got all the attributes to be a very good centre-back in the future. To be honest, I'd rather we went for Dortmund's Akanji, but there we go. So they are names that certainly I would consider as a centre-back. I mean, we don't want a nightmare scenario where we're looking at someone like Jerome Boateng. But let's see. I think centre-back is probably the likeliest signing we'll make in January because I think United were looking at that even in the Mourinho days. So that's going to be interesting. As for the centre defensive midfield position, look, Ndombele, Lyon, French, 22. A lot of us have spoken about him. The concerning thing about him is, yet again, Chelsea are sniffing round. Chelsea are very good in the transfer market, and United need to start being good in the transfer market. Because if Chelsea were to get Ndombele and Pulisic, they're building a team that's young and has got a lot of potential in it. United need to be all over this. And if we're not all over Ndombele, we need to be after Ndidi at Leicester. We've got to go and get one of those two players. Both of them in their early 20s. Both of them with the potential to be the next Kante or the next Verratti or the next centre defensive midfielder that runs a midfield, and United need to be all over that, and I think it's very important. So look, I don't think there's a massive amount of noise around it, but definitely the sort of player that I would be looking at for Manchester United. Get your comments in below anyway. I should have said that at the start. Get your comments in below. You might have ideas of players that we could move for this month or in the summer that would be really significant for Manchester United. So get your comments in below. My prediction is going to be a centre-back. And I think we're going to make 2 signings. I've got to say that. But I don't know who the second one's going to be, so I'm not even going to predict it. But I think we will sign a centre-back. That is my prediction for January for Manchester United. What we also need to be very, very wary of is the outgoings. Look, there has been a bit of positivity. Maybe Fellaini will go. There's also been talk of... the reality is there are players who are in their final year of the contract. Now, I'm not going to talk about the players who we've got an option of a year to extend, like De Gea and Martial, which we have, and Darmian. But maybe Darmian could move out in January. He's a player worth looking at who might go out the door in January, because we have done good business in January out the door before. Memphis and Schneidlin, remember. So, who else? Who else could we move out from Manchester United? Well, I think that... people aren't talking about this enough. Mata, Herrera, Pereira, Young and Jones are free. They're free to go now. They can talk to anybody in Europe and they can arrange to go today. They can't talk to anyone in the Premier League until May. But in May, they can talk to anyone in the Premier League and go for free. In January now, they can talk to people around Europe. Now, Pereira does have the option of another year, but as I've said before, he's got to agree to it as well. It's not just our decision, and I don't see why he would do that. So Pereira worries me a lot this month. I think we could see Pereira going, and he could end up going to somebody in the Premier League as well. That is a concern. Watch out for Pereira. Young and Jones, I have a horrible feeling we will give them new contracts because Young is obviously valued at the club and Phil Jones has been playing as a centre-back. We can lose those for free in the summer. I'd let them go. I don't see what they offer long-term for the future of Manchester United. Mata and Herrera are interesting. Mata and Herrera are players that people on the continent would want. Like, even Barcelona have been linked to Mata. He's free. He could say, I'm off to Barcelona in the summer. Thanks for my stay at United. I think that could happen. Herrera might look at it and go, I've not really played enough football over the last 18 months. I want to go back to Spain and I'm free and I can get a massive... Because remember, it's a bit like I said about Fellaini a year ago. Mata and Herrera can be as loyal to United as they want. But because they are free, any club they go to can say, look, in the market, I'd cost 20 million. I want a £10 million signing on fee and I want these wages. And it's good for the club, but it's brilliant for the individual. And it worries me. This is part of the Band-Aid thing that I'm talking about. Getting rid of Mourinho was great by the club. Appointing Solskjaer was great by the club. But it is a Band-Aid on an open wound. How have we allowed players such as Mata, Herrera and Andres Pereira to be in a position in January where they've got all the power to walk away from our club for nothing? How has that been allowed to happen? Why have we not got Martial, De Gea on long-term contracts yet? What is going on at our club? It's running contracts down to save money and then you end up in this stupid scenario. We've got to reset the clock, like Gary Neville said. We've got to start running ourselves like a football club and not like a bloody business, because this is a joke. We're all talking about who we're going to sign. We've got players who can walk out the door for nothing and it's not good enough. It's not good enough from Manchester United at all. But there we go. Please do drop a like on the video and give us your thoughts. I'm sure it's going to be a very busy month on the United stand, so make sure you're subscribed and get involved. Who do you think we're going to sign as well? Because it's always interesting to look back later in the month and see what you lot have actually predicted and have as your say. And remember, it is the transfer market. The transfer market's open. Get Playing Football Index. You've got to be over 18 and please do gamble responsibly. But unlike betting a £10 on a win and they draw and you lose your tenner, on Football Index, if you like FIFA Ultimate Team and buying players and watching them grow, you can buy shares in your favourite footballers and watch the money grow. As you can see, that's more my portfolio. I've got a lot of United players in there. They're all going up in value. Look at Mason Greenwood. 15 quid profit I've made on him in 3 weeks and he's not played a first team game for United yet. Sanchez, I only bought him a couple of days ago. I've made a couple of quid on him just buying 5 shares. His price is going to rocket. I've got Pogba, I've got Rashford, I've got Martial. United players are the players to move in on at the moment. You've got your top 200. It doesn't surprise me that Christian Pulisic's price is going up through the roof at the moment. Prices will go up on transfer stories, news stories and performance on the pitch. So at the moment, Pulisic is the number 1 player. Relatively cheap at 5 quid. If he comes to the Premier League, his price will go up as well. Rabiot, obviously a player that's always been linked with moves. Isco is a player being linked with moves at the moment. Eden Hazard, obviously a top player. Alexis Sanchez, not played a game in a while. His prices are going up. He'd be a good player to get on. Tahith Chong, clearly going to play games. Link in the video description for Football Index. Give it a go. It's really good. There's forums out there that you can talk to people on about. You can put long term, like I bought De Bruyne ages ago for cheap because I knew when he came back he'd go up in price. Bale, I'm going to keep hold of. I think his price will go up eventually. But the link is in the video description for that. Give it a go. And remember, Transfer Daily will be here with you every morning at 7 a.m. throughout the transfer window. So get involved. We've got more content for you coming up today. Thanks everyone for watching. Speak to you all soon. Have a go on Football Index and get your comments in below. What business do you think United will do this month?